Hello and welcome to Presence. Have you ever had the experience of wanting to create change in your life, but recognizing that you are the biggest barrier to getting there? Even when it's uncomfortable, we know there are times that we fight change, that we truly want to stay in where we were versus being open and receptive to the newness. So on this week's show, we're going to talk to you and share with you our thoughts and some tips on how to be open and receptive. Hi, Ravi. It's great to see you.
Hi, Holly, and it's good to see you as well. This is really building on last week's show, and the key about being open and receptive to me is that it's not just open to what we think it should be, but what the way sometimes things come in is different in form, but the essence is what we really wanted all along. But also, it's being able to let go of what we know is familiar. Last week we talked about the comfort zone versus the familiar zone, that people hold on to what's familiar. It's not necessarily comfortable, but they will fight like crazy to stay with what's familiar. So it's to be able to step into openness to say, okay, let's see what comes and let's have fun with this.
I think about sometimes my spiritual practice in terms of nature. And if the seed wasn't receptive to the nutrients in the soil, that seed wouldn't grow into a plant. When that plant breaks through to the sun, if it's not receptive to that light, it too won't grow the leaves and the flower. We think the lotus flower is often considered a very spiritual thing. How can we in 2017 step into that same receptive place of light? I was at a program last night and they had that song, Lean on Me When You're Not Strong.
Yeah.
That whole idea that the world can't provide for us unless we're receptive and asking for that which we need. And we've often been acculturated to, we have to know it all, we have to do it all, we have to create it ourselves. And in this show, being open and receptive, we're going to invite you to let go of that resistance to letting your needs be known and open to that possibility.
Yeah. And I mean, some of the ways to do that, to sort of break out of that familiar zone and to open, is to really start doing that a little more in everyday life, right? If you cross your fingers like this, you'll find every time you do it, one thumb is on top of the other. You don't do it the other way, because if you do, it kind of feels weird. We get used to it. So really simple things, like if you drive to work, right? Do you always go the same way? I'll bet you do. Okay. What about if there's a whole new route to do that? Right? Things like that. Are there things that you habitually do every evening? Change it up. Go out sometime with friends and so on. So just really simple things to start into that new.
Well, I think too, part of it is a softening, maybe bringing in a gratitude practice this year. I just got a new gratitude journal that when we stop to think about what it is that we have received each day, that might be a physical item or an experience, that opens up more channels of receptivity. Yesterday, and I'm grateful I had the opportunity to have a deep phone call with a friend. I was grateful to have the opportunity to write my blog for the month. That those things open me up to more connections and more people. Another concept around receiving is having compassion for yourself and compassion for others. Had a great conversation last night about non-judgment with a group of people. When we judge ourselves as not enough, then we're closed down our channels of receptivity. Yeah. When we judge ourselves from a place of compassion and gratitude and open to the possibilities, which is why I think these New Year's times are so exciting, because as a collective culture around the world on this big giant marble in the sky, we all sort of soften and say, wow, what is possible? And so these weeks ahead, look at how you can receive all those things that you've said.
Absolutely. And You know, it's also at a time like this, reflect back on all the things that have happened over the last year that you never imagined could have happened, right? Because if you just look back in your life, everything doesn't happen exactly as you planned, and yet it all works out. So, you know, the gratitude practice can extend to this. Take a look at all the things that happened that you never dreamed could have happened, all the connections, all the this and that, and realize that it did work out. You know, it's a matter of sort of reassuring yourself.
Yeah, I was working on my vision board earlier this week too. And I went back and looked at previous ones. And what I had to realize is we're open and receptive, which is the theme of today's show. I had to receive all of those things into my life over the years, whether it was the dress that I put on my vision board, or the divine relationship, or the family, or the meal that I wanted to have in a fancy restaurant, or the travel to Bali. That all of those things came from a core energy in my heart and my brain and my mind and my body of being willing to receive. So make sure that you do that this year.
Yeah. So we're going to dive more into this in our deep dive show. We're going to get into a whole bunch of other ways that you can do this. But these are some very, very basic, simple steps that you can start right now. So if you're part of our insider circle, we'll get into the deep dive on that show, and we will talk with you next week.
Have a great week.